if I never write an article again that's like the 7 players that are going to smash at their ADP, like, yes. Please.
Actually, I just brought you in. That was really good producing.
That was the coldest of cold opens.
The coldest of cold opens. How's it going, buddy?
Good. It's great. How are you? Thank you for having me.
Of course. I was thinking before you hopped in, you being an Iowa guy, do you get to watch, like, do you watch a lot of college football during NFL season?
It's a good question. I watch a lot of Big Ten football during NFL season, and I love, I'm sure a lot of people are this way. If you cover the NFL for a living, like, you still want to be a meathead fan about something, about some football team, and so I mean, there's no finer school to be a meathead fan of than Iowa, because they give you plenty to complain about and also plenty to kind of sort of squint and you'll feel okay about it. Right. So yeah.
I feel
it's been.
I feel some kinship there with Pitt in the way that the way that Pitt has been historically, like, just to, like, especially, at least we had like the ACC championship a few years ago with Kenny Pickett and stuff, and we're able to, like, I was in my adult life able to experience that, which I don't think will ever happen again. And then you at least get like really interesting players that hit the NFL. And then as I was thinking about this is a shower thought for me today, for the record. I was thinking about you in the shower, and as one does, yes, you think about your future podcast guests while you're showering. But I was also thinking about the Iowa players in the NFL right now. You guys are kind of running pretty cold right now. You get your tight. Okay, let's go through this. I was thinking about it. Okay. Sam Laporta is fine. Like, he's been fine. He hasn't been like spectacular, but he's been fine, right?
I mean, he's been better than fine.
Okay. He's been above average so far to start the year, or like what we expected him to be. Let's say that,
right?
Right. You have George Kittle on IR. You have TJ Hawkinson, who, what? Like, I mean, he's like, I was even like, I was low on Hawkinson entering the year. Never in a million years did I think that we'd be sitting here looking at these numbers from Hawkinson through 2 games.
So far, the signature play of his season is blocking a bear into oblivion while McCarthy scored his only rushing touchdown. Yeah, it's an issue. I don't put all of that on Hawkinson.
I don't put it on Hawkinson at all. No, I'm just trying to put down Iowa right now. And then this is the actual bad one is Kaleb Johnson. And what,
there's actually 2 that are kind of like Tory Taylor, Tory Taylor, been a sneaky disappointment.
How could I forget? No, but like the Kaleb Johnson thing last week, I mean, that's just like the most down bad I've seen any player really, right? Any like moderately hyped rookie in a while that I've seen. I mean, that play was just really, really rough.
He shouldn't be active this week. Yeah. It would surprise me a little bit if he was active this week, because between the gaff on the gaff on the kickoff that probably cost you a game and the fumble the week before, I mean, if we can't trust you in limited duty as a runner, and we can't trust you in the return game, which was always questionable because that wasn't Kaleb's responsibility in college. Then why are we playing?
Yeah.
I mean, you can't be a depth chart running back who can't play special teams. So he's probably not going to be active.
Exactly. And I'm assuming that's the reason that he's been dressed, is that that he was back there returning kicks, is that they're like, well, he's dressed, we got to use him in some capacity, or else what's the reason for this? Right. And so they throw him back there to return kicks. But to me, I think anyone that like prospected him or watched him in college, like, it seems like a really kind of strange fit to have him in those duties and playing that kind of role, right? But yeah, I mean,
but I mean, we are seeing some really weird players return kicks under the new rules, right? Like Samaje Perine is returning kicks, and if he's doing it, why shouldn't Kaleb Johnson do it? But I agree.
Yeah, it's a little bit strange. All right. So last time we talked, you were on here. Was it 2 years ago that you were on Perspectives?
2 years ago.
Wow. Yeah. The first year of Perspectives.
Early days.
Yeah. The early days. You're only like the 3rd or 4th person that gets the returns tag in the title of the show, Andy Behrens Returns. But things have changed for you. You've got the deep shot now. So I want to start off this interview and this conversation with what's going on with the deep shot. What is it all about? And what you and Dalton are working on.
Yeah, it's been, as maybe you could guess, it's been a wild few months for me. And the deep shot is just sort of a natural decision to, I only want to collaborate with my good friends is basically where we're at. And Chris Harris and I had been talking for years on and off about how could we do something together? How could we collaborate together? And, for better or worse, Yahoo gave me the nudge that I probably needed to say, oh, hey, how about we actually do this thing? And so Chris and I have been launched a subscription podcast. We've been doing it once a week. It's great because Chris is one of my oldest friends in, our friendship predates either one of us being involved in fantasy in any way, except as boneheaded managers. We have known each other almost 30 years. And so we're very natural, he probably yells at me more than he yells at anybody else on the show, and it's fine. We have a really good rapport. We've been arguing with each other for a very long time, whether on podcast or off. And so that's been awesome. That's the Yacht Club podcast. And then Dalton and I just wanted to do something together. And I feel like we each wanted to keep doing the things that we were doing at Yahoo that we loved. And I really love the job. I love the basics of the job. I love writing it. I love thinking about the NFL. I love watching all the games. I love the sort of dirty work of the job. There's a lot that I didn't enjoy. If I never write an article again, that's the 7 players that are going to smash at their ADP. Please. So I've pruned all that, right? All the stuff that clicks really well, but that I hate writing. I'm not doing any of that. I'm doing the writing that I really love. And I feel like Dalton's doing the same thing. And so I'm collaborating with him over there. I'm collaborating with Chris, and it's been really fun. Is there a market for it? I don't know, but it's been really fun.
Well, I think everyone should check it out for sure. And I've been a fan of yours, not just as an analyst, but a human as well for a very, very long time now. It's great that we get to catch up every year at the Expo, and I get to walk into the draft room with my belt over my shoulder and watch you and the rest of the group just start saying, get out of here. We don't need you in this room.
You were, by the way, you were so unfairly attacked by Matt Harmon during the throughout the drafts last year. It was really unbecoming.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And there's the one player, I know this is a total aside, but the one player that he attacked me for most, I attacked him for Brian Robinson and Ramondre Stevenson because it's just the most, boring picks of all time. And then he destroyed me after taking Javonte Williams. So eat it, Harmon. Eat it. Eat it. But no, I'm very excited for you because you kind of have an entrepreneurial spirit too. You've done a lot of solo ventures in the past too, correct? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've had a pretty long career in writing that predates Yahoo, right? Yeah. So I've been through it as a freelancer, and I've done some fiction writing. Some of that went well. Some of it went less well, but some of it went really well. And I'd written sort of early days at ESPN. I was writing non-fantasy stuff over there. Yeah. So I've been through it as a freelancer. I know what that life is like, and I don't, part of the decision with the deep shot too. And I had some opportunities to do, I'm doing a little freelancing for The Athletic right now. And I had some opportunities to do, to work for another sort of major media company. And I just don't have the appetite for it right now. After the Yahoo experience, and just again, the possibility of working closely with Chris and Dalton was just too appealing to me to pass up. I also think that Chris and I come at it and come at the job in a somewhat different way from a lot of folks. Mm-hmm. And I just think, if you're the sort of person who, number one, can reasonably afford to subscribe to multiple different things, you might as well seek out varied approaches. Yeah, I mean,
look, I know that even, just speaking about Chris and Chris alone, a lot of people say that we're sort of like the yin and yang that they use, for their analysis, because I'm obviously more data heavy and he's more film heavy. And I know that you compliment him very well too, and that, or you come at it from a more similar perspective as him as well. And so that also would complement, what I'm doing here. So basically what I'm saying is, if any of you guys, like you said, have the ability, check out what Andy and Chris are doing. And one more thought that I want to just throw out there, because as people are listening to this, I think they might just be curious about like what's going on in the heads of fantasy football content creators that are working at bigger media companies and stuff. I remember vividly, like when I left FanDuel, and obviously FanDuel is not the same as and this is sponsored by DraftKings for the record. Obviously FanDuel is not the same kind of, media, a company as like a Yahoo is, or an ESPN or anything like that, especially within the fantasy space from like a content perspective. But there were a lot of people that were like, oh, he got, like something happened or X, Y, and Z went on. And like, I think it's really like, it needs to be said that things will go down at your individual jobs and no one needs to know what goes down in those situations. But the choices that you make might just be the choices that you, the path that you in particular want to go down. Like you're mentioning, like, I really wanted to do the deep shot stuff. And like, there were these other opportunities. And I said to myself, no, I just want to kind of do this thing where I can control what I'm working on and stuff. And I thought the same thing whenever I, left and ended up leaving FanDuel. And it's, I really want to like, I want people to feel empowered to like do the thing that they want to do as opposed to what they think they should do, like,
right. You have to be in the right position in life to do it too. Yes, right. Like it's obviously it's not for everyone, but I was definitely in a situation where, I was at a point in life. I was at a point where just the idea of if I was gonna pitch subscriptions to something, if I was gonna try to pitch people on playing a game or buying literally anything, I wanted it I wanted to be something that I felt very strongly about and passionate about, and something that would obviously accrue to my benefit too. Not right. I don't want to sell subscriptions to somebody else's weird product, and I don't want to pitch people on playing a game that I would not necessarily myself play.
Right. Well, it's like, and the same thing happened to me. People were like messaging me and be like, "Hey, do you want to run the content side of this business and do and try to get subscribers, et cetera, et cetera?" And I'm like, why would I not just do that for myself? Like it's a lot more attractive to kind of go about it that way. I kind of just left that, and I left that for a reason, because I want to, bet on myself and do this, on my own, because it's more rewarding, in the end. So I'm really happy for you, and I hope everyone checks out what you're working on. All right, let's get to some fantasy football discussion. Let's start with a pretty high level, broad question. And I'm going to ask you what you think is sort of the biggest surprise of the fantasy football season through the first 2 weeks.
Yeah, I guess I'll give you a small picture answer and I'll give you a big picture answer. And the small picture answer is that if you would have told me 2 weeks ago that Christian McCaffrey was going to be the healthiest member of the 49ers, I would have, I would have absolutely ridiculed you. It would have been worse than Harmon at King's Classic. That has been shocking to me. As soon as we got the first news blurb about the calf, I was like, oh man, if we only knew this 2 weeks ago, he would have been a third rounder. Yep. This is crazy. I can't believe this has happened. I drafted him in all these places. Yep. It was like one of those events where you take the full inventory of, oh my God, where do I have McCaffrey? Yep. I have to write off those teams. Yep. They're doomed. And now maybe he's one of the right answers. So that's crazy to me. And the other thing, the big picture thing is really, I feel like one of the general pieces of advice that I was giving during draft season, and shoot, this speaks to your brand, in fact, was that, hey, if you miss out on those top 5 quarterbacks, those top 6 quarterbacks, no big deal. This position's so deep. Yeah. I feel great about the QB 20. This is awesome. Yeah. They're all these guys. I can talk myself into any of these guys. They're in fine situations. And, there have been some hits. Justin Herbert, a notable hit, a couple others. But man, we're in week 3 and I'm ranking this position and we're in the mid-teens and I'm staring at Carson Wentz and Jake Browning and Bryce Young and I don't know which is the best option at QB 15 or 16. I mean, that's crazy. Yeah. So that position went from very deep, crazy deep, almost too deep for single QB leagues to now it's, oh man, hopefully you made one of the 3 or 4 right choices.
Yeah. From what you've seen, do you think that quarterback play, because I kind of am seeing it from the perspective of quarterbacks are look bad. Like they're not playing that well, but some of them are kind of getting there. Like Kaleb Williams is a really good example of this, right? Where like he's not playing that well, right? But he's getting there because a scramble rate is there, and like he's at least giving you some of that, and he's getting some garbage time, and like there's a very real scenario, in my opinion, where Kaleb Williams is actually a really good fantasy quarterback just because that defense is struggling the way that it is, and we know the weapons are there, and he is just going to degaff his way to a top 7, top 8, season at the position, but in a really ugly way, like in a really just not what you really like feel comfortable with. Like every week when you put him in your starting lineup, you're like, should I really do this? Are you seeing do you think that there's just a systemic like quarterback problem, or is it like offensive line driven? Because I think that there's been some offensive line issues, that's kind of extended from even last year a little bit. But is that driving this, do you think, or is it just like, no, we just have some really, really good quarterbacks, and those are the guys that are giving us the edge?
Yeah, I think there's also a couple of other players. I guess I would put Trevor Lawrence a little bit in that same category as Kaleb Williams, and maybe it's not the same. Like the Bears defense has a chance to be like spectacularly bad now. Yeah. They've been hit with some injuries at just the right spots to perhaps allow 35 points a game every game forever. But Trevor Lawrence a little bit the same way, where like the actual experience of watching him is not terribly satisfying. Yep. And yet we're probably still going to get a bunch of multi-touchdown games. And I will say that like the overall look of Liam Cohen's offense has been, I imagine if you're a Jags fan, it's really nice to not see 2 receivers arrive at the same place at the same time, expecting the same throw, because that's been just like a hallmark of the last 5 years. So that's good. Like there are some things that you can like about that. I also, we're in a time, and this, like over the last 10 years or so, we've basically seen all of the greatest fantasy seasons at the quarterback spot. Yeah. And so if you've been playing the game a really long time, you've been playing 20, 25 years, like you definitely came of age as like a late round quarterback drafter. Yep. And now we're in this time where like, maybe it does make a little bit of sense to take Lamar Jackson in the 3rd round, because that guy has the first and fourth best fantasy seasons in the history of the position. And Josh Allen has like 5 of the top 25. And like you can get a real edge at quarterback in a way that you just simply couldn't 20 years ago.
Yeah, 100%. It's something, I wrote about that in the draft guide, and how there's just this predictability aspect to these quarterbacks that you can't ignore. Like you can do value-based drafting type analysis and say this quarterback is X number of points better than a baseline. But what's missing in that kind of like really basic analysis is the fact that we know who these quarterbacks are going to be. We know who the good quarterbacks are going to be. It's Lamar Jackson, it's Josh Allen. I mean, we're recording this before the Thursday night game. So if Josh Allen miraculously has a terrible game against Miami, don't come at us. But it's just we knew who these guys generally were going to be. And I always saw it as like there was at least a dead spot in the 3rd round of a lot of drafts where we're like, okay, we're like, are we, how comfortable are we taking some of these running backs? And even, there was like a drop off around like after JSN, like around that area at wide receiver. And that's where it kind of felt comfortable. But I think that we'll probably look back at the season, like you're saying, and say they should have been even probably half a round or a full round earlier than where they were being drafted. The Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson types.
Yeah, no, it might be right. And that's one of those things where I'm just thinking back to draft season. One of my principles when I go into any draft, and this comes up if you're picking in the back half of the 1st round, and this is the drafts are just unfair. So you're out on the best running backs, right? And you're out on the top tier receiver. I always feel like you got to give your team a real edge somewhere. And it's not ideal to try to make that edge at either tight end or quarterback, but it's better having an edge there than not having an edge at any spot at all. Yeah. So that's where I was most commonly, I'd pull the trigger on Lamar Jackson or Josh Allen. I probably have them equally across different leagues, but I do think it is a real and meaningful edge. And to your point, there's no uncertainty about who the high ceiling quarterbacks are anymore. It's not really a guessing game at this point. We know that those two have so many of the best fantasy seasons that have ever, that anybody has ever authored, that it's probably going to be them.
Yeah. I mean, I always go back to like the 2015 season because it's such a funny example when you look at the correlation of top 18 quarterbacks and where they were drafted and how many points per game that they scored. Literally zero correlation between top 18.
Yeah.
So like the QB 18 that year had just as good of a chance basically of scoring a lot of points as the QB 1. That's how just random and wild and crazy things used to be. And it's just not that way anymore. And I think the market has kind of slowly adjusted, but probably not fast enough. Speaking of quarterbacks, Joe Burrow is now injured. Sounds like it could easily be season ending. I know that there's some optimism, surrounding like maybe 3 months, but like a lot of, doctors out there on the Twitter streets are not optimistic about Joe Burrow returning. How are you viewing Ja'Marr Chase and T. Higgins and Chase Brown now with this injury?
Yeah, I don't, it's complicated because it doesn't wreck the season for them, right? We have proof of concept with Jake Browning. We've seen it. He made a couple of just fantastically poor throws and poor decisions last week, and that's going to be part of the experience. But we have a half season of Jake Browning at the controls of this offense, and it wasn't bad. Yeah. He completed like 70% of his throws. He had a crazy yards per attempt, I think was like 8.0. It was good. It wasn't the season that Joe Burrow would have had. I think you have to kind of recalibrate. And if you, the argument for Joe Burrow was, man, if anybody's got a shot at 5,000 yards this year, it's got to be Burrow. Let's look at that defense. Look at the talent around him. If anybody has a shot at 40 touchdown passes, it's got to be Burrow. And I think that's out the window. I don't think we're getting that from Jake Browning. It doesn't mean that we can't it doesn't mean that he can't have a bunch of 250-yard, 2-touchdown performances, and that can support 2 completely viable fantasy receivers. As for Chase and Higgins, I think particularly with respect to Chase, the ceiling is not what you maybe thought it was, right? Yeah. Like if you thought, oh man, I'm drafting a guy who's probably going to win the receiving Triple Crown, I think I'm looking at 120 and 1,716, and that's probably gone. It doesn't mean that he can't still finish as the overall wide receiver 1. I think that's in play. I think Jake Browning knows what he's working with. I think T. Higgins can still be a 1,000-yard receiver, and I think Chase Brown can still be really good, but he can't be the featured back in an offense that's going to average 32 or 33 points a game. So that's where you have to, it's any dream that you had of Chase Brown scoring 15 touchdowns is probably gone too. Yeah. But hey, I don't know, 1,200 yards and 8 touchdowns, 10 touchdowns. That's a fine season. We can work with that. Yeah,
I think in the end, the work is at least still going to be very concentrated to these guys, right? And yeah, it's unfortunate that work is now not being distributed by one of the best quarterbacks in the game, and that's going to hurt these guys for sure. I looked at, because I always do my rest of season rankings, and then I compare those rankings to what just the consensus is saying, and how the consensus is ranking things. I still saw Ja'Marr Chase, and it could just be how, because I'm just downloading from Fantasy Pros and just saying okay, here's how the consensus is thinking right now. And so there might have been some lack of adjustments happening just early on whenever I went and did this. But do you think that Chase should be a top 3 wideout still, or do you think that he should be more in the, let's say, Amon-Ra St. Brown range versus, where he was?
Well, first thing I'll say is that Amon-Ra St. Brown that's not disrespectful.
It's not. And, no, right. Yeah, I should be clear about that. It's not.
And maybe Amon-Ra St. Brown, I don't know, either Amon-Ra or Puka is probably my wide receiver 3 if I'm, wide receiver 2 or 3 if I'm redrafting right now. I'd give a little edge to CeeDee Lamb. Yeah. But then Ja'Marr Chase is still right there. Yeah. I think Justin Jefferson has the dual questions of what will it ever look like with JJ McCarthy? And there's just a crazy wide range of outcomes for a Carson Wentz led offense. So I don't know how this is going to go for Justin Jefferson. At the high end, it could be good, but I don't know. I might rather have Puka or Amon-Ra St. Brown right now. The thing about the Lions is that, and I don't think the Lions defense is going to be quite as bad as Cincinnati's defense. Not that we know for sure, but the argument for Jared Goff should have been pretty similar to the argument for Joe Burrow, and it probably wasn't getting made enough. Yeah,
you're probably right. At the very least, Jared Goff at home in that dome, we know is someone that should mostly be started in fantasy football. Look at you, though, the pro with the segue moving into Minnesota the way that you did. Let's talk about the Vikings. No JJ McCarthy. for X amount of time. We don't need to get into the conspiracy theories with McCarthy. Though I am kind of conspiracy theory pilled here with what's going on with McCarthy, because he seemed fine towards the end of that game. Like, I did not see this coming, and the fact that it happened so fast, and they were able to say that this injury exists and we're going to put him on, and he's going to be out, et cetera. It was a little bit strange, but let's push that aside because people don't need to hear about those weird conspiracies. The pass catchers, like you mentioned your concerns about Justin Jefferson. Do you think, I'm assuming you have similar concerns with a TJ Hawkinson type, and, Jordan Addison will be back after this week. That also obviously just throws this and makes this even muddier. And then the follow-up question, I want to talk about Jordan Mason a little bit with this Aaron Jones, this Aaron Jones injury.
Yeah, I listen, I'm a big Jordan Mason fan, and I have a fair amount of him, and I'm kind of excited to see what this looks like. I also think that the combination of him and Aaron Jones was a great idea.
Totally agree. Yeah.
And those two should complement each other really well. Yeah. So it's not like, oh, finally Aaron Jones is out of the way. I don't feel that way at all. Like, I think they were very well paired. That was really smart. That was really smart team building. But for the next month or so, I'm also pretty excited to see what it looks like if we can just give Jordan Mason 18, 20 touches a game. I think that's going to be pretty good. He's fun. He's just an absolute hammer. We got the proof of concept last year over, about a third of a season. It was great. So I think that can go really well. I mean, I think, the Vikings are they're like a turnkey operation for a good quarterback, and they just don't have one. I mean, I've heard people more bullish than me on Carson Wentz, and I'm willing to say that I have no idea what it's going to look like. Right. 6 teams in 6 years is crazy. And it probably says something about Carson Wentz, right? That nobody has invited him back. I don't know. It could be. I don't think it can be worse than like what the last game looked like for JJ McCarthy and what most of the Bears game looked like for JJ McCarthy, but it could be almost as bad. I'm somewhat hopeful, but a lot of that hope relies on the fact that, maybe the head coach is truly a miracle worker. And if this reclamation project delivers a useful quarterback, that's very impressive on the part of KOC.
Yeah, to me, it would be crazy if a fantasy analyst got behind a microphone and started just saying how confident they were in Carson Wentz.
Right.
Like, it would be absolutely absurd. Like, anyone should be really, really hesitant about what's about to happen. But then, like you said, there's this Kevin O'Connell effect that we've seen other quarterbacks, not just, it wasn't just a Kirk Cousins and a Sam Darnold thing. I mean, they've had other guys step in that have at least been able to keep things going.
Yeah. Josh Dobbs, Nick Mullins, like guys that you would not want at the controls of your offense have been functional, and have delivered good games for good players.
Exactly. And obviously the weapons are there. The Jordan Mason thing to me was always like, I totally agree that the pairing with him and Aaron Jones was perfect, because I still think Aaron Jones is top 3 or 4 pass catcher at the position in the league. Like, he's just really, really good. I mean, we even saw it in week 1. He had that great catch against Chicago, in that game. And so I love that pairing, because Jordan Mason, I kind of bucketed the early down grinders and talked about them together a lot this summer, where it was Tank Bigsby, Brian Robinson, this is trade, and Jordan Mason. But the difference with Mason that I had talked about was, if you look back, in college, he didn't do that much as a pass catcher, but he played with Jahmyr Gibbs, right? So it's like, well, what do we really expect him to do in that kind of environment? And then he goes to San Francisco, and he had a really low target share last year when he had some opportunity. And I don't think that he's like a massive plus as a receiver, and that could definitely hurt his ceiling a little bit from a fantasy perspective. But sometimes in these scenarios, when things break the way that they've broken for Jordan Mason, how is he not going to be a bell cow in this offense? Like what else is good? Like, I know they brought Cam Akers back, I believe, right? And like, maybe I look at what's going on there, and I say to myself, he should be able to walk into a double-digit percentage target share, in that offense, and be really, really viable even as a pass catcher. Because at the end, like in the end, like with pass catching at running back, and I'm curious if you feel sort of the same way, but I really look at things. I talk about this during prospect season a lot. I look at things as like, you're either like a huge plus as a pass catcher where you can line up like in the slot and do crazy things like Christian McCaffrey does, or you're just like Gus Edwards or something like that, where it's just, like you're clearly never going to be used in that way. And then there's this middle ground. I think Tank Bigsby's in the Gus Edwards area, right? Like he's been pretty horrific as a pass catcher, but I think Jordan Mason can be in that middle ground and be fine.
I think that's the perfect way to look at it. And I would say that, there's probably part of these game plans that they just have to toss out, because I do think that Aaron Jones is, I don't keep a running list of these guys, but it's a small list of running backs who can just go run routes, who like, we can use you as a receiver as needed. And it's Achane and it's McCaffrey and it's definitely Aaron Jones. And it's a small number of players. And it is a rare skill at the position. And it doesn't, that doesn't always show up in box scores necessarily, because we get a lot of guys who like, they're fine in the screen game and they're a great check down option, but you would never put them in the slot 10 times and say, go run routes and beat somebody. Right. But Jones can do stuff like that. And I don't think that Jordan Mason can, but it doesn't mean that he can't catch. And I don't know. We should probably assume that if somebody hasn't shown a skill necessarily in the NFL, that they're not likely to do it. But we also shouldn't, we shouldn't completely close our eyes to the possibility.
Yeah, especially again when there's literally no one else there for Jordan. Like he should be able to run a good amount of routes, and this is just how it goes in fantasy football. Sometimes is that like this is the contingent upside that we talk about, and if Aaron Jones, a good pass catcher, is no longer in his way, then we should expect more work there. This episode is sponsored by DraftKings. There's no better way to get closer to the action with DraftKings Daily Fantasy, the ultimate destination for football fans. New customers can play free for their share of millions in prizes with their first deposit of $5 or more. Download the DraftKings Daily Fantasy app and enter promo code LATEROUND to play free for your share of millions. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 8778-HOPE-NY. In Connecticut, call 888-789-7777. 18 plus in most states. Eligibility restrictions apply. Ends December 31st. See terms at DraftKings.com/promotions. Now back to the show. Another thing that you probably could have answered with the biggest surprise to start the year, and I think a lot of people might have gone that direction, is the rookie running backs and how they're underperforming. I mean, I'm
sorry, do you mean the greatest running back class in draft history? Is that what you're referring to?
And look, I'm guilty of this from the standpoint of, the Zap model really liked these guys. Now, it was brought down to earth a little bit based on the actual draft capital that these guys got. And so, the pre-draft stuff looked great for a lot of these players. And then draft capital hits and, the model had its favorites. It still liked a lot of the, it liked Kaleb Johnson. It liked RJ Harvey. It liked, Treveyon Henderson and so on. But regardless, like I saw this as a pretty decent opportunity for a lot of these players to do well in fantasy this year. Specifically like a Treveyon Henderson, who I thought was one of the best. I know he got steamed up towards the end of August and stuff, but he was one of my favorite values up until that point. I want to go one by one with these rookie running backs and just talk about them, because I haven't seen panic like this since I don't even know from the fantasy football space. And it stems from, people in my Discord to people on Twitter and people already burying these guys' careers and so on. So let's just go one by one. Let's start with Ashton Jeanty. And you don't have to, maybe you could, let's have you rate it on a panic meter, 0 to 10, 10 being the most panicked that you've ever been in your life about a player in fantasy football. Okay. All right.
So here's why I would say that Ashton Jeanty is actually, and we can make an argument that, things are probably going to be fine for Ashton Jeanty because the guy behind him on the depth chart is Zamir White. Right. And there's not like, who else are you going to ask to do things?
Hey, do not talk down to Dylan Lobby. Okay.
I'm sorry. All due respect to Dylan Lobby. But there's, it's not a particularly crowded depth chart. However, he was your first round pick. So the notion that my first round running back might just end up being a guy who scores 7 touchdowns and gives me 1,100 yards, I'm probably not winning the league if that happens. Yeah. That is a bad outcome for your first round pick. And the numbers sound fine. And that's, the Raiders can tell themselves that was a successful year, and he can tell himself, hey, it was my welcome to the NFL year and it was fine. that's a pretty disastrous year for fantasy. And it is certainly on my radar that he might finish up that way. So I guess I'd probably call him a 7.
Yeah.
And I think even some of his comments after the Chargers game I don't think it was a throwaway cliche when he talks about adjusting to the speed of the game. You're coming from the Mountain West, and you're coming from a conference where, like, man, you make one guy miss and it's a 60-yard house call. And now you make one guy miss and, oh, look, there's another guy. It's just you picked up 2 yards by making somebody miss. And that the NFL's hard. Yeah. And sometimes sometimes a 3 or 4 yard gain is the right outcome on a particular play. And that is not anything he has ever experienced before.
Yeah, and I'm not very bullish on the environment for him. The line has not been playing very well. And I also, when I look at the list of running backs that we're going to talk about, it's the top 5 that people were drafting, in fantasy drafts, and top 5 that got drafted, aside from Quinshon Judkins, that got drafted in the NFL draft. But, when I look at like the coaching staffs, I could see a scenario where the Raiders get the goofiest with their rookie running back. Where we already have seen like certain scripts and Ashton Jeanty's not on the field. Like his peripherals haven't been as you noted, first round, second round type running back as you would even remotely want. So I think versus where people drafted him, this is a problem for sure. Let's go to Omarion Hampton, where, we had the clash of the disappointing rookie running backs on Monday night, and he didn't get much push from the offensive line. And so, I don't think that he's necessarily like shown anything yet either, but where are you at with Hampton from a panic meter perspective?
Yeah, this would be a 6 or a 7 for me as well. And this is one that I don't know why I avoided a lot of Omarion Hampton. I didn't have strong feelings on him one way or the other. I kind of liked what I saw in college. I will say that I have found it kind of jarring how, he's a guy who needs to basically come to a full stop before like changing direction. And that is a particular style that, is maybe a little bit less appealing, and it requires a very specific team context in which to work. I don't enjoy that. I do think we're going to see a little bit more Najee as Najee gets up to speed. That fumble occurred late, and so the fumble is like the thing that really sticks in your mind. I don't think the fumble was attributed to
it was
Hampton,
not. Yeah.
But I'd put it on him, and I'm pretty sure the Chargers are putting it on him, and I think that contributes to probably workload that you'll see over the next couple of weeks. It just hasn't looked great, and that doesn't mean that Omarion Hampton can't be a great player over the course of his career in the second half of the season or whatever. But he looks like a guy who's still finding his way, and the Chargers should be thinking, I don't know, the Chargers should be thinking Super Bowl, so they're not going to mess around with a whole lot of player development when they have somebody else that they trust. So I do think that is a job that could flip at some point. So it's on my radar that I should be worried.
Yeah, I think that the Hampton stuff is, now look, he's had 23, I think I said on Living the Stream, he's had 23 American rush attempts so far in the NFL. And, it's hard for me to just go in so far in one direction that I've seen, on Twitter and stuff. Shocking that people on Twitter and social media are being like absolutely insane about these rookie running backs. But, I felt like watching the Raiders and the Chargers, that the Chargers offensive line from a run blocking pass blocking, they haven't been as bad. From a run blocking standpoint, it's been pretty horrendous, and I'm trying to pull it in, like hold it in a little bit and not say like this is, trending and so hard in one direction for Omarion Hampton. I would agree with you that I think we're going to see more Najee over the next few weeks at least. And then maybe this is a second half emergence, kind of understands the NFL game a little bit better. And maybe the offensive line gets a little bit better and healthier as well. And that helps things. But I've had a hard time isolating, I think is the easiest way to think of this, isolating Omarion Hampton and who he is as a player from the offensive line play at this point.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I just will also say that I think there are running backs that you can put behind a sketchy run blocking line and they'll still put up some numbers. Right. They might not be, they might not lead the league in rushing. I'm not sure he's that guy.
Yeah, I would. Yes.
he might be a guy that just needs a clean run to the line of scrimmage, and then he will pick up the yards. But if you make him halt, if you make him stop behind the line of scrimmage, he's not, like the quickest feet in the game. He's not somebody who can instantly change direction and still get you 3 yards.
Yeah, that's a really good point to make. Treveyon Henderson, he goes to the doghouse after these holding calls and really bad pass pro reps against Miami this past week. And then Ramondre Stevenson has a great game. So where are you at with Treveyon?
Yeah, so this is the real problem. The real problem is how well Ramondre just played. Because I do think that Ramondre picked up some yards that were not necessarily blocked for him. He looked great as a receiver in that game, and it was sort of the best version of Ramondre Stevenson. And it was a guy that we didn't really see last year, maybe outside the first game or so. So that's a problem for Henderson. But I also, coming into the season, I feel like and I landed Henderson in a bunch of places. Yeah. I was describing it to Chris this way. Like, if I was just in a draft with normal humans, I probably got Treveyon Henderson, and I probably got him in round 5. Yep. If I was in a draft with, you and other people in the industry, probably went in round 3, and there was somebody who just wanted to plant a flag, and I didn't get him. So I have enough of him in leagues that I care about that it is on my radar. But I also thought coming into the year there was a real chance that, Ohio State looked at him and said, hey, we want to keep you healthy and at your most effective. So you're never going to carry more than a dozen times a game, and we're going to throw it to you a little bit. And, that ended with him playing every game and them winning the national title. Yeah. Like, that worked. And I always thought there was a very real chance that he'd be like a 12 to 15 touch a game guy. Yeah. And now I think that's still in play. It might be the best case scenario, but it's very much still in play. So I'm actually a little bit less worried. Yeah. It was alarming. He was the guy out of this entire rookie class who was supposedly most ready to pass block in the NFL, and he was turnstiling in week 2, and maybe that's an isolated event. Yeah. It's clearly something he takes pride in, and I'm hopeful that it gets better. Maybe it was just one game that we can crumple up and throw away. But for me, I still see a path to him actually hitting expectations. Yeah. So my panic with him is probably a 4 or 5.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think of all these guys, at least compared to the guys we talked about with Omarion, Hampton, and Ashton, Jeanty, I'm least worried about Treveyon Henderson. And part of it, of course, we would factor in cost a little bit because, we got him a little bit later than the other guys. But I think part of it, too, is just the fact that he's the kind of player, and we know that receiving just matters more. A target is worth more than a rush attempt. That's his game. And so I talked about this a lot when talking about drafting Treveyon Henderson, was that you're drafting him in a spot where more or less it's probably like a not total floor where you're drafting him, but like if he's going to see a 10 to 12% target share in this offense, let's say, he can pay off of that ADP as a part-time player with that kind of target share. And so what we're really buying into here is an outcome where the Ramondre Stevenson sucks and the Patriots really want to use a lot of Treveyon Henderson, because what we saw from Ramondre, like you said, we hadn't seen week 2 Ramondre since early last year. That over the shoulder catch that he made, I don't recall him making a catch like that, over the last year and a half. And so, I think that the unfortunate, coming together and what happened with Treveyon Henderson last week is that he had a really bad game on when he did, when he's touched the ball, I think he's looked fine. I've seen the explosion. He looks like he's a really good player. But it came together where these holding calls and this bad pass pro happened while they face Miami, while Ramondre Stevenson is having the best game that he's had in over a year. You can't really ask for a worse run than that for Treveyon Henderson, which is why I'm like, all right, let's wait and see how things kind of ebb and flow with Ramondre and all of this before we completely bury him.
Yeah, no, I think that's totally fair, because also like Ramondre's 2024 season really did happen. That's on the resume too.
Right, yeah.
It's not like I expect him to have week 2 just every game for the rest of the season, but it was, if he's really going to be that guy, it is certainly a problem for Henderson, but it's not an insurmountable problem.
Yeah. RJ Harvey, who was kind of like a diet Treveyon Henderson from the way that people viewed him, I guess, and what he could do in the Denver offense. He's been underperforming because Tyler Bidet is a thing for Sean Payton right now. So where are you at with RJ Harvey?
Yeah, bidet is an issue. The fact that J.K. Dobbins has been really, he's just good. When he plays these last couple of years, he's just really, really good. So if you were expecting RJ Harvey, and again, I feel somewhat similar to how I feel about Henderson. I wasn't super high on Harvey because I always thought J.K. Dobbins was going to be a problem. I thought Dobbins probably should have gone ahead of Harvey in drafts. I don't like to be in a position where like, oh man, I can't wait for the J.K. Dobbins injury to happen. I actually think it would be awesome if we finally got a 17 game season out of J.K. Dobbins. That would be great. I think he looks really good. That's a real complicating factor. And then the fact that bidet is playing at all is a complicating factor. So not great. My panic would probably be a 5 or a 6 there. Yeah. And the only reason that it's that low is because I probably didn't draft Harvey as a starter.
Yeah, that's fair. I just liked both Harvey and Dobbins. Like I have a ton of Dobbins, and I probably drafted more Dobbins than Harvey, but like I thought that they could both be valuable at different times of the year, and so depending on my builds, I kind of went with Dobbins if I need an earlier production running back, etc. But I didn't see the Tyler bidet stuff happening the way that it's happening.
Didn't either. Not at all.
And
at all.
The problem, when this kind of thing happens, I'm always at this like split because I liked, and it's like I'm kind of embarrassed to say this, I liked Tyler bidet when he was coming out as a prospect, and so when these guys that I liked, like Jerry McNichols, I like too. I mean, it's a different scenario because he's even more of a veteran, been around more. But I liked these players, and then whenever they get opportunity, I want to like be excited, but I'm like, but wait, this is at the expense of RJ Harvey. That's unfortunate.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think the bidet thing, like in certain game environments, I think RJ Harvey and J.K. Dobbins could both hypothetically be fantasy viable. It's just that if Tyler bidet is going to run, 20 to 30% of their routes and see some looks, like that's enough to make those guys less valuable. Like, and Dobbins is seeing enough on the ground where he's fine. It's not a problem for him right now, but it's a problem for RJ Harvey.
Yeah, it makes RJ Harvey almost unflex worthy at least in a non-bye week. I mean, you're going to be flexing him for sure when we get to the buys, but right now, week 3, he's certainly not a guy that you're just set and forget in fantasy lineups.
All right, last one, Kaleb Johnson. I mean, like, are we? I'm bringing him up just because I've seen the response of like total dust after that play. I'm saying like not going to find the field this year. Not going to be relevant at all. Do you have any hope for like maybe a late season kind of resurgence from him?
Yeah, I think he's kind of the classic guy. Like, listen, you probably got to drop him this week. I'd be in leagues of normal size, right? If you play in a 10 team, 12 team league, he's probably not somebody that you're going to hang on to once the buys start and you actually have like urgent needs. I can't imagine hanging on to him in a league that size. I legitimately do not think he's going to be active this week. If he can't play on special teams, there's no way he's going to play. We're still only talking about Kenny Gainwell, that he has to nudge past. And I do still believe that he was a good system fit for this team. I am a believer in some of the things that I saw in the preseason. Like I'm also an apologist for Kaleb Johnson. He'll never buy another drink in Iowa City. He was an absolute hero last year. Everybody always knew what Iowa intended to do, and they couldn't stop Kaleb Johnson. It was a crazy season. That said, his NFL career could not have started worse. Yeah. So I think he becomes one of those guys where like he gets dropped now, and he probably ends up a success. If he's going to be a success story at all, it's not going to be for the team that drafted him, and it's going to be back half of the season. Maybe it's going to be a November, December run that he has when somebody gets injured. Of course, the other problem that he has, Jaylen Warren was always going to be a thing in Pittsburgh, and Jaylen Warren, just like Ramondre, coming off a spectacular game and had one of the plays of the year. I can't imagine that we're going to see 10 plays for the rest of the season that are any better than that little dump off to Warren in week 2.
Yeah, I mean, I think Jaylen Warren is just more of a threat as a player and what he does from a fantasy perspective than a guy like Ramondre would be for Treveyon, because Warren, we know, is good in pass pro and is really good as a pass catcher out of the backfield and can do a lot after the catch. Whereas Ramondre, I mean, aside from week 2 Superman Ramondre, is not necessarily like that kind of player. But yeah, I have very obvious concerns, with Kaleb. And I'm going to just wrap up the rookie running back talk by saying all roads just lead to Bhayshul Tuten. That's really what this is. That's really what this is all about.
I think that's fair. And it's funny, in conversations that I've had with Harris, like for the last month or so, we almost use Bhayshul Tuten as like a punchline because, he is whatever you want him to be, that's right? Yeah. He's this fantastic idea that's hanging out there and everybody knows the combine numbers, but he looked so good. He looked really good. And it wasn't even just like the touchdown was great and was a highlight play. And I felt terrible for the poor defensive end that dropped into coverage and had to get, clowned like that. But he had some non-highlight plays in that game where like he pushed piles. He was running inside and pushed piles. And if he's capable of doing that, like, I mean, ETN looks good too. I don't think it's not like I think ETN is losing a job anytime soon, but Tuten deserves to play.
Yeah. It's exciting because the Zap model actually liked Tuten just as much as RJ Harvey with draft capital factored in and stuff. So this is a Bhayshul Tuten podcast that you're on right now. So I'm very, very, very excited about that. Let's talk about AJ Brown and Devontae Smith. This Philadelphia Eagles offense, I don't want to say struggling because they're winning, but it does not look, Kellen Moore gone, like things have changed. Are you concerned about AJ Brown and Devontae Smith, or do you think this is just kind of like variance, couple weeks, no big deal?
I think and hope that it's variance. I think that Dallas had a pretty interesting and somewhat successful game plan against them in opening week, right? But that game plan also invited Jalen Hurts to run and just take 6, 8, 10 yards on the ground anytime he wanted it, and he did. And so I can kind of forgive that, and then I can look at week 2 and say, okay, there was a little bit more AJ Brown. It was all slants. It was all really short stuff. That's not the best use of AJ Brown, but fine. It's the Chiefs. That you're on the road. It is a tough opponent. I don't think ultimately that Philly is just going to pass the ball, whatever it is right now, 22 times.
Yeah, they have like a 38% pass rate right now. Yeah, it's very low. Yeah, it's very low.
It's not going to be like that every week. So I'm not panicked in that regard. I also don't think that AJ Brown is a player necessarily in the decline phase yet. He's not that old. Yeah. I've seen him pile up a bunch of 1,400-yard seasons for Philly. So I mean, I know how good AJ Brown is, so I don't have doubts there. We know how good Smith is. I don't have doubts there. It's more a matter of just let's get to a game where they have to throw it 32 times, and if it's bad then, and if we're getting 7 targets to Jahan Dotson or something like that in that game, then okay, I'm a little bit concerned.
Yeah, and I think the other thing too is that like when it comes to the regression on the passing side for Philadelphia, like I think people just need to recognize that teams are very healthy and they can run pure right now because nothing's really happened in terms of injury and stuff. And, it's easier to have good like defensive performances right now because there haven't been those injuries and such. And once some of that starts to pile up, then that turns into, our defense isn't playing as well. Or like if Saquon Barkley, knock on wood, were to get injured or something, and then they're not going to lean on their running backs nearly as much. And then things change and shift. And, last year they ran really pure. Like if we're being honest, I mean, any team that wins the Super Bowl runs really pure, in that season, more than likely. And so, I think with Philly, I'm not like rooting for injuries to happen or anything like that, but things are going to happen, during an NFL season that makes me feel at least a little bit more comfortable that they'll be forced to throw the ball a little bit more.
That's a really good point that people should just keep in mind generally, because I feel like we learn this and relearn it every year. And I actually feel like Baltimore teaches it to us probably as much as any team. Like every defense, even the ones that you think are the very best in football, they're 1 or 2 injuries away from actually being a little bit bad.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. And not only that, but just like defensive performance can vary just as much as we're so focused on offense all the time because this is what we do with fantasy football without recognizing and realizing that like a defense could wake up and just have a really good game plan and just play really, really well in a given week. And we've only had 2 weeks. So let's chill a little bit, let's relax for a second before we start, dropping these absolutes about these offenses.
Yeah.
All right. Brian Thomas, he is one. But we're very cynical on today's show. I'm only really talking about these dudes who have been horrible. But Brian Thomas, should his managers be in a panic right now?
I mean, it was an alarming game. Yeah. I don't want to excuse the game. People, I'm sure, saw the interception that, I don't know. Did Trevor throw him into coverage, and was he going to get lit up? Yeah, he was going to get lit up. And also he made a business decision on the play that led to an interception. That was bad. I thought he turtled up a couple times on other catches. That was bad. And yet he still got targets in the end zone. Yeah. He wasn't that far away from scoring. It was a horrendous game, and obviously the final drop was ended up deciding the game. So terrible game for him. But I said it earlier, I actually don't hate the look of this offense, even though things haven't clicked for either Hunter or Thomas yet. And yes, it's weird that we're throwing like contested balls to Parker Washington or whatever. Things are a little bit weird. But I also think some of the Liam Cohen fingerprints that you might have expected, where guys are schemed crazy wide open, have been there. It is just refreshing to watch. And again, I'm sure Jaguars fans would agree. It is so refreshing to watch that team play games where the pass is delivered and there's only one Jaguars receiver in the camera frame. I don't have to look at two guys coming together, fighting for the same ball. I felt like that was a hallmark under Urban Meyer, under Doug Peterson occasionally. It was just kind of a broken offense a lot. Yeah. And I feel like there are better days out there. So I'm concerned because it was a legitimately terrible game from Thomas, but I'm also willing to throw it out and say, I saw half a season from him that put him in the first round of fantasy drafts. Right. And so he's still pretty legit. Yeah, again, and I think patience is really, really important too when there's an offensive coordinator change and coaching change the way that we saw. There's going to be some growing pains. It's very hard for offense to just immediately click when there's a brand new coaching staff and system in place. This isn't like an OC getting elevated or something and getting promoted into the role, And so that's part of the reason why I'm trying to stay the course with, and at least Trevor Lawrence still had a usable game last week in fantasy. It wasn't like, it wasn't like he's one, like we said earlier, he's one of those guys that are just uncomfortable, but might get there in the end. Yep. Are there any players who have performed well so far, but you think are pretty legitimate sell candidates? Oh, I don't want to answer this question and make it seem like I don't think these guys can continue to be good, because that's not what I mean. But if you're taking somebody to the trade block right now, it better be somebody who's actually performed. The wrong way to play fantasy football is to throw Brian Thomas on the trade block right now, or AJ Brown on the trade block right now, because there's just no way you're getting value with where you drafted them. I guess the guys that come to mind are Emeka Egbuka, who I love. I loved him as a college player. I didn't initially understand and appreciate why Tampa Bay was drafting him, but I think we all get it now. He looks great, and I think his rookie year can be really good. He is going to have assuming Chris Godwin comes back at some point relatively soon and sees the field a lot, because that guy's got a lot of guaranteed money coming to him, and he's a good player when he's healthy. He's going to be a little bit of a problem, and I just a touchdown a week is probably not going to be the rookie season for Egbuka. So I think that's a guy that I would be interested in shopping just to get a price check. I would also say that, and some of this is, I was not as high as perhaps I should have been on Devon Achane. He's still a little guy who operates in a really weird way, and his coach might be gone on Friday. We'll see. We'll see what happens. That's on my radar. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, this Buffalo game could go a ways toward determining the future of play calling in Miami, and if anything changes there, I don't know. I don't know that any other coach would come in and say we need to build this whole thing around throwing short passes to Devon Achane. So his role has the potential to change, even though he's a wonderful player and a super fun player, enormously explosive player. Yep. Yeah. No, I like those calls, unfortunately, because I like both those players. But the Egbuka one has been difficult because of the Godwin. We just don't know where Godwin's at. Right. It's really, really difficult because. My general philosophy in fantasy is always if a rookie shows out early, they're I probably want to be way more in than out, on that player. Mm-hmm. But I do think that there's some extenuating circumstances, and it's not like Egbuka has seen unbelievable. He's not seeing a 30% target share or anything like that in the offense to start the year. And so I understand, going that direction, although he's
become one of my favorite players just because the off the field Igbuka is also awesome. He's like a huge nerd, like superheroes and video games and stuff. And like, it's like Jamal Williams. Jamal Williams off the field is also hilarious with his nerd
fantasy intangibles.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Like those, and to me, like keep guys that you want to root for, in fantasy. That's also part of this game.
That's why I've got Harold Fannin on all these teams, man.
That is right. That's right. You were around for the Harold Fannin mother discussion at the expo. Yeah. It's also wild that he's so legitimate now. I know. Like we meet the mother and I was like talking to his cousin about how Kevin Stefanski needed to run more 12 personnel and like how they needed to, and they're like, the guy, he's just like nodding his head. He's like, yeah. Like just like agreeing with me and stuff. And
I feel like you were not as drunk as I was when I actually ran into the Fannins and started talking to them. And I tried to have the same conversation, but probably in a less coherent way. But they could not have been more polite.
Oh, they were amazing. I hope that they come to every fantasy football expo. they just need to be there for us to just chop it up with. No, it's hilarious. That's the kind of stuff that I love about this space is that that's literally the one place on planet Earth that Harold Fannin's mom could be where everyone knew her son in that moment, like everyone there knew who Harold Fannin was.
And we were awestruck. Yes. I was so thrilled to be talking to Harold Fannin's mom. That was crazy.
It was so good. All right. Couple more questions. Which offense that started slow do you think it could turn it around?
I mean, I feel like the obvious answer is the Chiefs. Maybe it's not an obvious answer because it's looked really rough, but they do have an inner circle all-time quarterback, and we know what some of the problems are right now. And this comes down to basically how healthy Xavier Worthy can possibly be rest of season. It's a pretty significant injury that he's apparently going to try to play through. But what did we see him for? Like 4 or 5 plays in the opener, and he was. 2 of them were designed to go to him, and he was going to have the Hollywood Brown workload, right? And I think that was going to be pretty fun. I think a dozen or more touches for Xavier Worthy was going to be pretty awesome in that game. And then obviously we get Rashee Rice back as well. So we're like, and that's a while. That's still a month away, which is forever in the NFL. Yeah. And man, they could start really rough and take themselves almost all the way out of the hunt by the time Rashee Rice comes back. But I feel like we never know with schedules in the NFL, but I do feel like they've got a pretty nice runway at the end of the season. And again, like that is a team with the right DNA and the right quarterback, and things can get better there because you can just see, the 2 best members, the most effective members of that receiving core are going to come back.
Yeah. Do you have any concern about what's going on with the backfield right now?
Yeah, it's terrible. Yeah, right. It's terrible. That's been one of the most jarring and unnerving things is that I don't think Pacheco looks, he's got he's always had the little glitch where he has to fire up his feet. Like his feet have to pump like 2 or 3 times before he moves forward.
He's actually like Sonic the Hedgehog in the way that he has to, spin, like get ready to you see
that. Yeah, you see the spinning legs before you see anything else. But it just, that hasn't been there, and he isn't getting big workloads. And there's, I don't know how to explain the reliance on Kareem Hunt. I don't think Kareem Hunt looked good last year. I don't think he looks good this year. But those are pretty smart coaches, and they see him every day, and they have decided to play him about as much as they're going to rely on Isaiah Pacheco, which should tell us something.
I'm in the camp that they need to use Brashard Smith. That they need to. Yeah. And I remember we were on the panel at the expo, and I brought up Brashard Smith as like a dart throw kind of like player. But he brings a dynamic that they just don't have in that backfield at all right now, which is the really good pass catching and just explosiveness, that the immediate explosiveness, because Isaiah Pacheco can get going once he gets going, right? Like he can do stuff like once he gets like 3 or 4 yards down the field. But to me, Brashard Smith, even if you watch him from his few preseason reps, like that was there. I think that obviously, 7th round rookie, like what are we really going to expect, and how ready is he really going to be? And he doesn't have much experience as a running back in general, but part of me is just like, they need to just get back to this like insanely pass heavy, use them like Jerick McKinnon approach.
Yep, and that's the name,
right? Like like just do that instead of trying to make Pacheco. And I mean, I love Pacheco as a player. He helped the brand a lot back in the day, but like, I don't think that he looks the part. You could argue he's never really looked the part, but he's, had enough juice to sort of get by at times, throughout his career. And then, like you said, Kareem Hunt just seems so dusty. Brashard Smith, like, I think he's a good speculative ad, like a look ahead player, just to have on your bench this week if you have a spot, and then see what happens.
I think it's a really good call, and I agree on the preseason usage. That Bears game leaps to mind when, like, it was the first time that we got to see the full Mahomes offense in the preseason, and like he got 2 looks on the first series. I think at least one as a slot receiver. I don't know that he did anything with it, but like that would be really fun usage for Smith, and it's probably the appropriate usage. And I think McKinnon is absolutely the right comp. If they could just get back to the point where, that's the other thing. This offense has been so uninspiring that like the days when like Williams or McKinnon or whoever could end up as an RB1 off of like 8 touches, 10
amazing.
Touches. I don't really see that happening this year.
Yeah, I mean, look, there was a day where I traded Damian Williams away in Dynasty for a first round pick. Like that's a real thing that happened. So yeah, I mean, there was some very real hype around those running backs back in the day. All right, last question. Give me a bold prediction here for week 3.
Yeah, I think, you talked about Kaleb earlier. I think Caleb Williams could be a top 5 quarterback this week.
There we go.
I think that Dallas defense is really messy. I know I kind of gave him credit for the game plan against Philadelphia in week 1, but man, 300 combined receiving yards to Wan'Dale Robinson and Malik Neighbors, 450 to Russell Wilson. I don't think Diggs looks good at all. And it can be ugly, but I think the Bears are going to have to throw. They're going to have to try to stay ahead of whatever their defense is giving up. So this is going to be a pretty pass-heavy Caleb Williams season, for better or worse. I don't even, right now, I don't even know that Caleb Williams is he's the biggest problem because he's the quarterback, but I don't know that he's game to game necessarily the biggest problem. That defense is going to be terrible. The line still has questions. They're committing 10 penalties a game that are not all on Williams, right? So like there are a lot of issues here, but I think Caleb's going to throw the ball 40 to 45 times. Vegas seems to think so, right? Like the game total is over 50 now. I think there's just going to be a ton of points and yards in that thing, and Caleb can have a rushing touchdown, a couple of passing touchdowns, and 300 plus. Yeah,
love that call. I'm ahead of the market this week on Caleb. Do you think that there's a possibility that they look at their team right now and they say, all right, 0-2, hasn't been a very hot start for us. Maybe we got to shift things around and get Colston Loveland in there more. Luther Burden, I think, is the easier go-to, just given how they've deployed. I mean, Luther Burden, I think, ran 5 routes last week, do you think that there's a chance that we see some of that this week, or do you think it's still sort of going to be slow moving for him?
Maybe, but I also think, man, you might be underestimating just how much this coaching staff loves Olamide
you're right. Yeah.
It's a crazy thing to say, but beat reporters wrote about him every day. Yeah. Like I know that like nationally people wanted Luther Burden to really be a thing, and he looked good in the preseason. And nationally we were all telling the story of Rome Odunze. The beat reporters every day were telling you about what Zaccheaus was doing in practices, and I'm just passing it along. I'm not saying that Olamide Zaccheaus is any different than he was last year or the year before. We've obviously seen a lot of him, but he was really good in the preseason, and the coaching staff loves him. So I don't know how quickly Luther Burden takes all those snaps. I do find it curious that basically Colston Loveland is just running like clear out routes.
Oh, right now. Cole had an 80% route participation rate last week. It's crazy. Yeah.
Yeah, and Loveland was on the field when it was Bajent time at the end, and but I also don't want to say that that's the coaching staff's fault. Like they're the guys who see Colston Loveland every day, and they've decided this is what he's ready for. Yeah. He was also a guy though that seemed like he was scoring a touchdown every day in camp, and there was a little bit of buzz around him. I'm still hopeful because I loved him at Michigan. Like I think you and I talked about it previously. My favorite thing watching the JJ McCarthy tape a couple of years ago was like I just thought Loveland was a huge revelation, and I think that can still be there. It's pretty clearly not going to be there in the first month of the season.
Yeah. I think it's more than likely going to be just a slow burn, until like they're just going to slowly get more and more reps. And it's not just going to be like an overnight thing that would make it a lot more convenient from a fantasy perspective when it is that overnight thing.
It's painful with Loveland because you look at the way that like the stuff the Colts are drawing up for Warren immediately, the way the Browns are using Fannin immediately, like you're a lead blocker, you're taking wildcat snaps, you're split wide, you're in the slot, you're everywhere. And then Loveland is only occasionally seeing the field and barely drawing any targets. So it's tough seeing.
Yeah, I mean, it just goes to show that, because like I thought Loveland and Warren were both like, they were, from a modeling perspective, they were in the elite producer tier together. Like I didn't really see much of a difference between the two from like a talent perspective. I mean, they're different players, but I just mean like as an overall grade standpoint. And it just goes to show that like, how do we know that Colson Loveland wouldn't be used in a high volume way in a different situation right now? You know, it's just the way that it goes sometimes with this stuff. But Andy, this was awesome. I always love talking to you. Let everyone know, more about the Deep Shot, where they can find you and all the stuff that you're working on.
Oh yeah. Thanks again. This is really fun. And talking ball with you is always really fun. So this was great. I really appreciate it. They can find me at the Deep Shot. It's me. It's Dalton Del Don. We're doing all the stuff that we loved from the Yahoo days, and none of the stuff that we didn't necessarily love from the Yahoo days. And you can also find me on the Yacht Club podcast with Chris Harris once a week.
Yes, definitely check all that out. Tell Chris I said hello also. Because I talked to him at the beginning of the season, and then I don't really talk to him much until after the season's over and stuff, just because of scheduling stuff.
Because you need a break.
Yeah, yes.
Because that 1 hour is so taxing.
That's enough. That is enough. The fact that you're doing it now every week, I mean, God bless you. Anyway, all my stuff can be found over on lateround.com. Make sure you're checking out the Patreon. Make sure you're subscribed to the show, and make sure you check out the YouTube channel, youtube.com/@lateroundff. This will be on the YouTube channel. You can watch this if you're listening to it right now. And also the Late Round Fantasy Football Show with myself and David Kitchen, the crazier part of the Late Round Fantasy Football brand. We are live at 1 p.m. Eastern every Friday on that YouTube channel with the Late Round Fantasy Football Show. Otherwise, everyone, thanks for tuning in.